So the week before Thanksgiving, there was a teacher who asked her 9-year-olds to write an essay on what I am thankful for Thanksgiving. All little Joey could think to write was, well, I'm glad I'm not a turkey. In 4 days, we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving this year. And I have to ask this question because I always ask it of myself. Have you been giving conscious consideration to what you are thankful for and making that the focus of your everyday preparation? We know that the Pilgrims were thankful. They were in a new country. They were free. They had survived a couple of brutally cold winters. And we know that they were thankful for their newfound friends who they invited to their celebration. Down through history, just as the Pilgrims, humans have celebrated good fortune by having feasts. For thousands of years, the celebrations were of good fortune and a good crop. They always laid out the feast for their gods because they believed that their gods provided their abundance. We still believe that today. God is our source. In fact, the Passover feast of bread and wine that was Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples was a tradition that was thousands of years old and had been started by the agrarians. The agrarians were the first humans to make plowshares, to plant seeds, and to grow grain for food. Prior to the discovery of grain as food, humans were meat eaters. They relied on hunting and fishing for their food. The grains that were grown by the agrarians were ground for bread, and they were also fermented and turned into a brew, which we've come to know as beer. The agrarians would have a celebration each year at harvest time, thanking their gods for their good fortune by having a feast of bread and beer. The wine came later. So celebrations of good fortune and plenty have been tradition by humans always. And they always laid their feast before God in gratitude. As we approach Thanksgiving, ask yourself, is gratitude your Thanksgiving theme? Are your thoughts and conscious actions, first and foremost, all the things that you have to be grateful for? In preparation for our feast, our company, and our celebration, we tend to focus on the details, don't we? The details of the grocery shopping, the pie making, the decorations, the food preparation. And just as with Christmas, we often wear ourselves out before the day ever arrives. Any of you done that already? What we consider to be the necessary things we do to plan, they can overwhelm us. And we count them as a success. But how many of our blessings go unnoticed in the flurry of activity? The holiday is not just about turkey and gathering with family. It is about that, of course, yet it's an opportunity to give us a reason to be so much more. It's an opportunity to focus on all the good that we normally overlook and take for granted in our hurriedness and our busyness of life. When I was in seminary, I worked at the Silent Unity Prayer Ministry. If you don't know about that prayer ministry, you need to know about it. It's been in constant use since before phones were invented, but it's a phone ministry now. They serve over 2 million phone calls a year. It's an open line. When you call, you get a person, and that person prays with you. And it's an 800 number, so it costs nothing. So when I was in seminary, studying to become ordained, I wanted to work there. I wanted that experience. But come Thanksgiving, I was told that everybody, we had to have all hands on deck. Everybody had to work on Thanksgiving Day. They said it was because it was the one day of the year that the phone requests were larger than any other day. The Silent Unity prayer line, as I said, is over 2 million calls a year. So think about how many were that one day, if that was the greatest volume in a year. Each year we hear on the news that Thanksgiving is also the most traveled day of the year, both air travel and highway. We go home to family, airports are jammed, you know, our highways are jammed. And so I thought it was odd when they said we all had to work that day and that we would receive more calls that day, because I thought people are going to be with their families. Why would that be a busy, busy day? Well, I worked that day and I discovered why. The calls were not for prayers of gratitude. They were for prayers of anxiety, worry, anger, trouble, and divisiveness. Wow, that's right. People had gone home to be with their relatives, and instead of being grateful for their families when they got there, they were distraught. Families argued and criticized and took sides and didn't like the food, and on and on and on. Every call.
Where's the salt?
They were calling us for prayer because they were focused on what went wrong instead of how wonderful it was to be together, to have a family, to have good health, and to have success enough to be able to buy that airline ticket to go home and be with their family. It was amazing to me how people were not focused on how much they had to be thankful for. You know, we take prayers of gratitude at Silent Unity all the time. But no, they were focused on their own expectations of how their families ought to be acting and what they ought to be saying and what they ought to be doing. And that was the subject of those calls. It was an experience I'll never forget. So I'm thinking about all of this as I'm preparing this talk and what I want to say. So fast forward to last week. As I was planning this talk, I received a phone call of a sudden tragic death of a dear friend and coworker. He was only 43 years old. He was beautiful, kind, loving, giving. He had 5 beautiful children and a beautiful wife. I had worked with him and his 2 brothers daily for over 23 years. They were our facilities people. I would teach classes all year, and I would do services of all different kinds all year. And they would set up the room and tear it down and make sure I had a mic and a good sound system and whatever else that I needed. And I grew to know them and love them. He never, ever complained about anything. That phone call was full of shock and grief for me. It was overwhelming. And, you know, as a minister, you think, what words of comfort can I give? I couldn't give any. I was in disbelief and I was in loss myself. This tragedy happened a week before for this holiday of celebration and thanksgiving. Not only would this holiday be difficult, but all the future Thanksgivings would bring back this moment of intense grief for that family. I'd already begun to prepare the talk about a grateful heart before the call, and I had to begin asking myself, how do you tell someone to have a broken heart, who has a broken heart, to have a grateful heart? How do I talk about celebrate and celebration at a moment like this? I certainly had to rethink my talk. I certainly had to look at these difficult times that occur in our lives. And as I speak to you today, I'm still in that question. But one thing I can say is I truly can be grateful that I knew and I worked with this precious soul named Jaime. And I got acquainted with his family, and I saw the love that he had for life and all that he gave back to life. The reality is, many of you in this room have had recent losses. And I know that that grief is still new. And for some of you, that happened near this holiday. And I realized it's easy to talk about being grateful when everything's going great. How can we find gratitude for the things that we don't see as good? As I sat with Jaime's family and friends over 3 days and talked with them, I heard story after story of the good this man did for others. He helped all his neighbors with their home repairs after he had worked tirelessly all day at our church. Always, always, always with a smile. Never, ever did I hear that man in 23 years complain or frown about anything. And he would tell me how proud he was of his oldest daughter. She would be the first in their family to go to college. He was so proud of his mother, who was in her 70s, who was scheduled to become an American citizen last week, Wednesday, the very same day of his funeral. You see, his parents and siblings are immigrants from Salvador who escaped to America during a very dark time in that country. But the brothers came here and they started a new life. They were filled with gratitude for their freedom. They worked hard, they saved money, they got their parents into this country, and they have taken care of them financially because they were too old at the time to take care of themselves. In my 3 days with that family, I heard gratitude about Jaime from so many people. Over and over and over, I heard about this man who lived his life every day with a grateful heart. I heard neighbors and coworkers and family members talk about his loving kindnesses, his willingness to be good for others. It was who he was, always, with every ounce of his being. I know that because I worked side by side with him for so many years. Granted, as we all sat and talked about Jaime, we were all filled with the mixed feelings of gratitude and deep loss. The day of his funeral was the very day his mother had been scheduled to become an American citizen. Of course, that got canceled for her, but he had been so proud of that. And I saw firsthand the gratitude from his friends, his relatives, his co-workers, as they filled a very large church until it was standing room only. I've rarely seen a service that large. I saw gratitude for a life well lived and a man well loved. In the first 3 days after his passing, a GoFundMe account was started to help the family with the funeral expenses and to help the college tuition for his daughter. By the end of that third day, the GoFundMe account already had over $20,000 in it. People found a way that they could show gratitude in a time of grief. It was that very gesture that sustained his family. His brother and his wife said, "It's the only thing that got me here. I could not have come here except for the love and the generosity of the people who have given so much to us." As I thought about that, I thought people were able to give something to show their gratitude and their love for Jaime, even in that despair. And I also thought, we talk about gratitude opening up doors of good for us. The rewards of Jaime's love and kindnesses that he showered on others in his life spilled over into the lives of his loved ones, even after he was no longer with us. All of us who knew him, all of us were brokenhearted for that loss. And yet, all of us were so grateful to have known him and been touched by him and been able to celebrate the good that he had done in the world. Being grateful even for things that we don't see as good in our lives takes a stretch. It took a stretch for me. And it takes deep contemplation. How can we find some good in this? But I've come to believe that good is there if we choose to look and we choose to find it. In Unity, we sometimes call it loving what is. And it doesn't have to be a tragedy that we experience to learn this. But we do have to love the cards that have been dealt us, because we can't get through it to the other side until we do. If you want a better job or a better relationship, the same thing is true. Better health. You've got to love what you already have. You have to love the body you have before it'll get well. You have to give it your best before you can open up the space for better to come in. If you don't like the job you have, you won't get a better one until you love the one you got. And that's not easy. That's how it works. Our daily word this morning was from a quote from Eric Butterworth, who was one of our iconic Unity ministers and authors. And I had quoted him in my talk. And it was a quote where he said, "In one way or another, a grateful heart will always attract back to itself through wonder-working ways the great things needed to solve a particular situation. It is an outworking that you can stake your life on." You can say it another way and say, gratitude is a magnet for good. Gratitude opens our consciousness to receive more. Do I even begin to understand his death and the loss of such a beautiful soul? No, I don't understand it. Do I see the good that he did for others in the world because he was so grateful for his own freedom in this country? Yeah, I do. I pondered his life and what I knew of his life, and Jaime's job was hard. Those guys worked long hours all week. They had lots of physical lifting and moving and climbing and walking and lots of overtime. He didn't make a lot of money, yet he helped in the responsibility for caring for his parents, making sure they too lived in freedom and out of danger. He gave back to his community on a daily basis. None of us ever knew that till he was gone. They said even at night after he'd worked long hours, he would go around the neighborhood to his neighbors who he heard had a plumbing problem or an electrical problem, and he would make sure it got fixed for them. He gave back to that community. He gave his best. And it opened up his consciousness to attract more. I will always be grateful for Jaime, for having known him, for having worked with him, and having been blessed by him in so many ways. His life stood for good every day. And this is what Jesus teaches us. Just have your life stand for good all the time, every day. And then I began to think about what I knew about his history. Just imagine this. Wouldn't it be a heartbreak to leave your native country and go to a new world where you didn't know the language? You were offered little to the job market, so your wages were going to be small. You left your precious family behind. When they left, they didn't know if they'd ever see their families again. But you do it. And Jaime did it and decided to make the best of it. From the very beginning, he put his best foot forward. He learned the language and found a job and worked hard and never, ever, ever complained and always smiled. And in that time, he overcame many obstacles. But he made a life. He made plans. He wanted safety and freedom for those he left behind. And he made that happen. And though his precious life was cut short, which we never will understand, he was greatly rewarded. He met and married an amazing woman in this country. He had 5 beautiful children. And that oldest one, he had taken to Hobby Airport that morning and had the accident on the way home. He had taken her to enroll in college in the spring and left her to get on that plane. But he knew his daughter was going to college. And he knew his mother was becoming an American citizen. All his gratitude and all the good he did in the world came back to him in so many ways. Even in this tragic loss of his life and all the sadness that it has brought so many, I had to try to find some good before I could even write the talk I'd started. But I found it. This year, as I count my Thanksgiving blessings, my thoughts will be filled with all the many ways that my life has been blessed by that man and his family. My prayers surround them, as does my gratitude. This year, I've learned to find the good in the worst of times, and I've learned we do have to look deep and hard to find it. And now I do know it's always there in some form when we look. And so I want to say to you as I close this talk, I'm very grateful for every one of you in my life. This 2 years down here has been a joy and a blessing for me, and I'm so grateful for each and every one